Okay, so we are covering the Joker tie-ins for Night Terrors, and Batman kills himself. And it's hilarious. Okay, so this opens up with Batman and the Joker and the Joker's henchmen on a rooftop, and Batman goes after the Joker and slips on water, cracks his face open on the roof, and then falls to his death. And Joker and them don't know how to handle it. Like, they don't know how to process it. They're like, is he gonna fall off? And then just like smashes. And it's like, I mean, is this like one of his jokes, or is this like some kind of a gag or like a scheme? Like, is this part of his plan? He's just laying down there dead. Or he's dead as a doornail. They get down there like his arms and legs are broken, right? Blood all over the place. It's like, you should poke him, boss. Just, see what's up. He's like, I pay you to do that. You poke him, right? So like literally they poke this guy and they realize, yeah, man, Batman's dead. And what's so crazy about this is like Joker's life loses any sense of meaning because of the death of Batman. Now, for the most part, we kind of know that because in DC Comics, it's long since been established that like Joker derives his sense of purpose from like chasing after Batman, Batman chasing after him, right? This kind of cat and mouse game. But at that point, he's like, all right, well, I mean, we can't leave him here. Like, grab the body and throw it in the trunk and we'll figure out what to do. And they're like, we took a train here. It's like, then steal a car, but like throw his body in the trunk and then we'll figure out what to do. So following that, you pick up in a diner where Joker and his henchmen are talking while Batman's cadaver is just sitting there next to the Joker, which is twisted but hilarious at the same time. I'm not gonna lie. Of course, they've killed everybody in the restaurant, right? No witnesses or anything. And they're just kind of like mulling over who it is that they're gonna kill next. And initially they talk about killing Superman, right? It's like, well, I mean, how are we supposed to kill Superman? The irony about this is that in Injustice Gods Among Us, Joker, well, he didn't really kill Superman, but he killed everybody who was close to Superman, which drove Superman insane. But it's not impossible to kill him, right? Some green kryptonite or whatever. So they come up with a scheme, right? This guy Gaggy, who's like the diminutive member of the henchman team, he comes across a scheme where there's like uranium that Joker and his guys can steal. So when they get aboard this ship, one, they're all dressed as pirates, which is amazing. And then two, when they realize it's just as simple as going in there, taking the uranium and leaving, even just like the challenge of doing this is kind of boring. And it's sort of hilarious because this just shows the state of Gotham that it was in when Batman was running around as a superhero. People felt relatively safe, so there was no need for like excess levels of paramilitary forces or anything like that. To a degree, it was kind of the equivalent of folks like leaving their doors unlocked. You wouldn't necessarily do that in Gotham, but like it's that equivalent, more or less. And so because of that, once they steal the uranium, then it's just kind of like, I mean, there doesn't really, it's just kind of like, whatever, man, like, we'll sell it or whatever, but like, the Joker's just kind of bored, right? Because it's just like all these criminals are out there committing all these crazy crimes in Gotham, but there's no Batman. And so the Joker just doesn't really know what to do. Even his own henchmen bail out on him. And so once they take off, he ends up seeing this like classified ad in the newspaper for Wayne Enterprises, and he goes there for like a job application, right? He goes there, like applies for a position, he gets hired on, and then he just like starts going through the Wayne databases searching for like where's all the money, secret weapons projects, just different things like that, which I feel like it would be hilarious if that was possible, right? Like, where's all the money? Like, level 6 in a giant vault, help yourself. Like, it would be absolutely hysterical if that were the case. But then ultimately he's introduced to a woman named Helen. Now, Helen is a girl that if you've ever worked in the corporate environment, you've probably wanted to help her finish with all her living somewhere along the line, because she's annoying as all get out. Like, literally when Joker tells her, like, my computer's broken, I think, like, I can't figure out where all the money is, and I can't find like all the super weapons projects and stuff like that. She's like, oh, that's not what we do here, right? Like, we are the approved expense reports section for the company. Like, our job is to approve reports that have already been approved. But it like annoys the heck out of the Joker, because now he's encountering what is in effect everybody's worst nightmare, which is basically just bureaucracy. Corporate bureaucracy, getting anything done. So literally his job is to sit in an office and approve reports that have already been approved by somebody else. That's his job. And it literally starts to drive him insane to the point where like there's this moment where she's like, we're more like a device, to the point where like she's trying to describe what they do, and he makes this comment. He's like, okay, I get it, we're like the corporate accounting seatbelt. She's like, no, we're like a device that makes sure that the seatbelt doesn't get damaged, a seatbelt protector. And he just looks at her like, really? I'm sorry, guys. It's one of the best. It's one of the best Joker comics that I think I've ever seen. And it even gets to the point where like he pulls out a knife and he's just ready to just end this woman, right? Like right there. And so following that, you actually end up transitioning to a point where he's meeting with the rest of the staff, right? Just kind of having a bit of a break. And he's like, "I used to work for a calendar factory, but then they fired me for taking a day off." It's a terrible joke, but it's hilarious at the same time. But here's where things start to go south. So what ends up happening is this guy, Mr. Goodman, comes in, right? He's a higher up in the company. And of course, they refer to Joker as Johan. That's because he's just basically going by a fake name. But when this guy Goodman gets in, he kicks everybody out of the office and he sits down with Joker and he's like, "Okay, I've been looking over your end of month reports." And where Joker's like, "Are my numbers off?" It's like, "I don't know if it's an issue of your numbers being off, man, but there's all kinds of like insane scribbles on here, ridiculous drawings. And then you've got a drawing of me basically being deflowered by like a dog or a boar or something like that." And he's like, "I really have to ask the question, man, do you have any idea what it is that you're doing?" Now, as you guys know, Joker does not usually take kindly to insults of any kind. And so he does exactly what you would expect the Joker to do. He grabs a microwave, smashes it over this guy's head, turns it on, and kills him on the spot, and then basically just takes off the rest of the day. Now, what's also kind of crazy about this is that when he comes back in the next morning, he's got this giant trench coat on, right? He's got like this loudspeaker hooked up to him, and he just starts like rambling on to all these people in these endless rows of cubicles about how they're all just groveling worms, right? Cogs in a machine that seeks to destroy them, that they're bootlickers of a capitalist state that seeks only to exert control over them. And literally, like, he ends up in the office of John D, right? Kind of like the top dog over here at Wayne Enterprises. And what's crazy is the Joker puts on a gas mask, he opens up his trench coat, and it's just got what looks like explosives inside of it. At the very least, just massive amounts of Joker toxin. He intends to take like the whole place down, but then he's offered the job of Mr. Goodman, whom he killed. And of course, he takes the offer. And so a few weeks later, as he's like going through and telling everybody like the company's basically going belly up, right? Like all of our stock values are down, everything's trending in the downward direction, it's the end of times, things are going south, that you basically have people who are kind of laughing at the jokes that he's making, and nobody really seems to be caring about the fact that the Joker's killing the company. So where he ends up going out with drinks for everybody, he ends up traveling back home, he puts on Real Housewives. Now here's the kicker about all this. Batman's body is just a corpse sitting in the closet of the Joker. That's really all it is. It's just kind of hanging there, lingering there, maybe as some kind of a trophy, but it actually does serve a purpose. And the reason why is this. There are rumors circulating around the city of Gotham that Batman is back, right? People have literally seen him. And in fact, there was one point where he came by the office. And so the Joker is completely and totally unaware of this fact. He doesn't know that Batman's back. And if Batman's back, then how in the world do you have a situation where Batman is basically, or at least his body is in the Joker's closet, who's masquerading as Batman? And so what we end up getting is this amazing moment where these crazy nonsensical henchmen are doing crazy nonsensical things, and the Batman pops up, right? Now he shows up at night, just like you would expect, and he's attacking everybody here. But it's not Batman who like disarms people, right, and so on and so forth. No. This is a Batman who kills. He's like throwing batarangs into people. He kicks a guy into a fire and lets him burn alive, right? The whole time he's just laughing and carrying on. Now, as you can probably guess, this is the Joker. The Joker is masquerading as Batman. Or is he? Because then he suddenly snaps awake. He just wakes up. Now, the crazy thing about this is he's also got a wife and a son. It's kind of nuts, right? Like literally he's got a whole family, and his wife's just like, "Johan, you're just having another one of your bad dreams. It's cool," right? Like the son wakes up, the son gets put back to sleep again, right? That kind of thing. So then you jump to an interview that's being done for a position between Mr. Freeze and the Joker. Seemingly, these guys have never met before. And the funny thing is one of the funniest interviews ever, where Joker basically asks him in corporate speak, what makes you think you'd be a good fit for the company? What do you think your strengths and weaknesses are? And he's like, "Well, my biggest weakness is warmth. And my biggest strength is that I've shut myself off from compassion, empathy, and other emotions that have made the world grow weak," right? So like all the angsty people on Reddit is basically what Mr. Freeze is. And And so where Joker keeps calling him Mr. Fries, because technically it is spelled the way you would spell fries, but it is pronounced freeze, that they kind of go back and forth a little bit, you know, where it's like, it's actually freeze. Fries, your name is spelled Fries, it's pronounced Fries. Like, no, it's spelled Fries, but it's pronounced Freeze. And it's like, whatever, man, who cares, right? Like, why do you want to work here? And the thing about this is that Victor Freeze and a lot of the other traditional villains out there in Gotham, Scarecrow and those guys, they see the Joker as somebody up there in a kind of ivory tower to a degree. And while the city itself is effectively falling apart, and even Batman Returning is really more of a hyper-violent Batman, killing and destroying everything, is one of these situations where in a lot of ways, they kind of blame the Joker, right? Like, you killed Batman, and you're the reason why this crazy Batman is here now killing people, and why Gotham is probably even worse of a place than it was before, because this Batman is more effective than he was before. And so it's kind of wild, because following that moment, we actually figure out what's going on here. That Joker is in the middle of sleeping. He gets up and he puts on the Batman costume. When he's masquerading as Batman, he's actually sleepwalking. That's what's going on here. And I gotta be honest with you guys, it's kind of dope, because as he's doing this, he ends up like running out into the city of Gotham. He ends up coming across Gaggy, his former henchman, along with him having a couple of his own henchmen, and then starts like attacking them. And then Gaggy realizes it is the Joker masquerading as Batman, but at the end of the day, there's no reasoning with him. Now, what you could argue here is Joker is actually suffering from dissociative identity disorder, right? The Batman persona is a whole different personality designed to cope with the trauma of him killing Batman. It's messed up in a lot of ways. But hey, whoever said the Joker was a guy who was not screwed up? The guy is the definition of a broken human being, right? So the thing about this is that you end up transitioning to like a company baseball game, right? Wayne Enterprises versus LexCorp, and the Joker in the middle of all this like freaks out when one of the guys that works for LexCorp, the second baseman, makes this offhanded joke about how Lex Luthor keeps striking everybody out, and the Joker's the only one that seems to be able to get a hit on the ball, so they should just start calling him Batman. He literally chokes the guy to death. Now, something that I want you to notice here, everybody's very cavalier, right? They're very nonchalant about the Joker killing a guy, right? Because remember, this is all a nightmare for him, right? This is night terrors. This is all taking place in his head. That's one of the things to remember about the whole night terrors tie-ins. It's all going on in Joker's head. And so it's kind of just the world in which he lives. And so what ends up happening here is that Bruce Wayne himself, who is actually the coach for the Wayne Corp team, basically the guy who runs the entirety of Wayne Enterprises, as you would expect, ends up inviting Joker over for dinner. And when they get in there, of course, John Dee's there, because John Dee is basically like the Alfred stand-in in a lot of ways for Bruce Wayne and so on. And Bruce Wayne, of course, asks him, like, do you have any kind of a shellfish allergy? Well, Joker's like, no. And I mention that because when they get there, basically shellfish is what's being served. Now, the thing about this is that there's a comment that's made by John Dee, or really Winifred is the name that he's given here, where every time Bruce Wayne eats shellfish, he starts to kind of become a little unhinged, right? He sort of starts to go a little bit nuts. But there's this comment that he makes about how he pretty much knows that Joker is nuts, that Joker's going crazy, and Joker is basically becoming Batman. Now, the question that has to be asked here is, if Batman's dead, what's the deal here with Bruce Wayne? We're not given an answer. We're not. Because this is designed to take place in Joker's head, and Joker's insane, and there's very rarely any clear answer to anything. It's done in a very fast and loose and really cavalier way, which works. I think it fits in perfectly with the nature of the Joker's mantra, but then he suddenly skips forward to a point where he's giving like this meeting to everybody in the office, and all these board members are basically Batman villains who have been brought in by the Joker and effectively work on the board of trustees or work as the main board for Wayne Enterprises, and there's just like this guy named Ethan who is just kind of a bit of a goofball. So Joker stabs him to death with a pencil and then just kind of has him escorted out. The problem is that once Joker gets back home, his son has discovered Batman's corpse in his closet. So the Joker starts pushing the corpse back in, and then he tells his son, you got to forget everything you saw. I don't know what's going on here. It's just one of these things. Never come in here. this is weird, right? Just ignore what you saw. Not a great big huge deal. So even where the kid leaves and his wife comes in, the Joker kind of dismisses it and says, no, I just had a really bad day at the office and I took it out on my son. It's that kind of a thing. I need to go for a walk. So what he does is he concocts this scheme because he has not figured out that he's Batman. He hasn't connected the dots yet. And so with this scheme that he has, the whole goal is to basically trap Batman. Right? Like he pulls together like all these resources and he creates like a Joker toxin and all that kind of stuff. And he even like brings together all these henchmen and everything. The kicker here is he decides to lay down and take a nap before Batman arrives, or I guess kind of goes out into the night the way he normally does. And of course, that's when the Batman persona takes over. And when that happens, he immediately starts attacking everybody, right? Like just starts jumping in, attacking criminals everywhere he sees them, right? And he starts making like all these just terrible jokes at the same time. He's like, did you hear about the jogger who's afraid of speed bumps? He's slowly getting over it. I love the Joker's jokes. I don't care how corny they are. They always come off as amazing. But what seems to have happened here, kind of filling in the blanks a little bit, maybe the Joker really does seem to have figured out that his alternate persona is Batman. That when he's asleep, he's running around as Batman in the city of Gotham. Most likely it came off the heels of the conversation that he had with Bruce Wayne. So bringing together all these different henchmen was designed for the purpose of tracking himself. Sure, like there's the whole idea of Batman and like they are there because it was the Joker's plan to quote unquote catch Batman, but I'm talking about like a subconscious level, right? Like he wanted to catch himself. He just wasn't consciously aware of the fact that he was looking to capture himself, right? It feeds into that kind of notion that, what is it, like serial killers want to be caught, which is why they broadcast their crimes all over the place. But regardless of how you slice it, all of the Joker's forces come running in. And as soon as that happens, despite the fact that Joker's trying to fight them off as best he can, that literally they pop their Joker toxin, right? His mask comes off. All of his henchmen realize he is actually Batman. Even he himself realizes that he's Batman. And in these final moments, he starts screaming out and calling out about how they can't kill Batman, that they need Batman, that he needs Batman, that they all have to have Batman, that Batman has to exist, right? Like literally losing his mind. He wakes up in the real world, right? The nightmare ends. He just wakes up in the real world. And he's just kind of like, well, that was weird. Right, that was strange. And he's like, so literally talking to like all these henchmen that he had fallen asleep next to when the God of Nightmares had basically attacked everybody and put them all into a dream state. He's like, so that was all basically just nightmare? And Solomon Grundy in his half-broken English is like, yeah, like you're among friends now. And the Joker's like, everybody shut up, man. I'm going to go back to sleep. And the story ends. With that being said, guys, if you want to get caught up on Night Terrors, make sure you guys click the link to this playlist and I will catch you all later. Peace.